Have you seen this? I've seen it everywhere, and I'm so sick of it. I'm gonna be honest, we don't have much going on out in the Nintendo street, so all people talk about is the Switch 2. It's just so shameless. But, I mean, it's fun to speculate, there's nothing wrong with it. Hell, I'm a skinny white guy who wears glasses and has short brown hair, I'm basically a great value Scot. But I'm gonna be honest, I don't have much going on lately, so I talk about Nintendo, and it seems a lot of other people do too. So when I'm scrolling through YouTube at 2 AM on a Wednesday, what do I find? People talking about the Switch 2 with this thumbnail. And it is everywhere.
What are you waiting for? Let's dive in and get into our first piece of news.
First, let's take a closer look at this render. Let's get the elephant out of the room first. These controllers. Why are they so bulky? Yet all of the buttons take up 35% of the surface area. Not to mention, what is this? Is this so they can slide up and down? I'm really having a hard time thinking of what could be the use case for these sliding around. While that is egregious, and are points everybody harps on with this concept, there's so much more wrong with this. It's like one of those weird trick images where the longer you stare at it, the more you find. Like, why is there a huge plastic mega bezel under the screen? Is it so the screen will fit with the Joy-Cons? If that's the case, why not make the screen bigger? No, even better yet, just take out the sliding Joy-Cons entirely. But that's not all. There are no triggers, there are no bumpers, and there are no plus and minus buttons. Also, why are the Y and X buttons yellow? But there's one more thing if you look really closely. The D-pad buttons on the left Joy-Con are actually bigger than the face buttons. Also, why is the Nintendo logo off-center and to the right? I mean, what were they thinking making this? This has been the poster child for the Switch 2 for almost a year now, and it just makes me kind of sad. There are better concepts out there. Why aren't they being used more? I just don't get it. Wait, before I go any further, I feel kinda bad talking somebody else's work. I mean, 3D modeling's hard. Well, I'm guessing it's hard. It seems like a ton of work. The person who made this probably doesn't even know too much about the Switch in the first place. And I guess it is eye-catching enough or it wouldn't be used as a thumbnail for every Switch 2 video I've ever seen. For comparison, here's my render. I did it in Microsoft Paint. See, it's not that easy. Oh, it's actually not bad. What I need to do is find the source of all of this and get closure once and for all. And I found it. It was really easy. Now that we found the culprit, it's time to find out. Doing some heavy research. Yanko Design is an online magazine dedicated to covering the best in international product design. Apparently they started in 2002 covering student work, but now have grown into an international publishing company. They also have an offshoot called YD Select, where they sell some pretty damn cool stuff. Really expensive, but it looks great. And wow, wasn't that in a Mr. Who's the Boss video recently? We've gotten completely off track here. Weren't we supposed to be looking for this? So, going back, in the About section, we can see that they have 100,000 plus subscribers. So does that mean they have a YouTube channel? Well, sort of, but we'll get to that later. First, let's check out their other social media. They call themselves a social titan. Jesus. And at first glance, it actually seems kinda true. They have a Facebook page with over 2 million followers, I'm assuming. An Instagram with over 1 million, and a LinkedIn and Pinterest with both over 400,000 followers. They seem to be doing well for themselves, but at the time of writing this script, the Facebook page with over 2.1 million followers posted 18 hours ago, and they got a grand total of 1 like. At first, this seems to point to botted followers, but this is likely deceiving. They posted a video in 2019 that got 8.1 million views, but it seems their newer videos do about as well as mine. But if I'm being honest here, I don't really know how Facebook works. My impression is that only old racist grannies use it, so these numbers are most likely legitimate. Going through their other accounts, they seem to be pretty legit, but their Instagram link's broken. They do have one, but it only has 215,000 followers, so I guess those numbers actually meant likes? That's a little deceiving, but you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. But at this point, you might be asking yourself, what does this have to do with that horrendous Switch 2 render? And admittedly, it's not much. But we did learn that this company hires freelance 3D artists to make minimalistic designs and sometimes some tech items. Hence the Switch 2. Now that we know all of this, if we can track down the original post, we'll find out exactly who made it. So you remember how we'd get back to the YouTube channel later? I mean, they have a YouTube channel? Well, sort of, but we'll get to that later. Well, it's later, and it's the most popular video they've ever made. Now, I'm hoping this 30-second YouTube video will give us greater context for the asinine decisions they made in the render. Now let's check out this video. Firstly, the mega bezel seems to be so the new dock won't scratch the screen. Honestly, I really like this redesigned dock and hope Nintendo does something like this. They won't, but it would be amazing if so. It seems every time you dock it, you get a special animation. Now, I really like this, at first. It's some Nintendo charm that they've honestly really missed out on with the OG Switch. But imagine sitting your Switch in the dock and you have to sit through this animation every single time. Now, at this point, I'm honestly nitpicking. This is a really cool Nintendo style thing that they could legitimately do. Let's carry on. Okay, now this is awesome. Having another screen with some cool info about the game you're playing is my kind of stuff. Sorry, I got a little excited there. I really like this idea though. In fact, other Nintendo YouTubers such as Arlo and Beat'emups designed their Switch 2 with an open-faced dock so you could do this. Except this concept came out almost a year ago. I have to give my props to Riccardo here. Some of the design doesn't really come together until you see the full thing. Oh wow, this new UI is so sleek and modern but still has so much life. And just wow, look at this animation for inserting a new game. Riccardo, I'm falling in love. Okay, I was falling in love, but now we get to the Joy-Cons. I have to give credit for one thing. I really like how the Joy-Cons slide into place. It's almost like the magnet system everybody's theorizing, but less forceful. In fact, a PC handheld called Pimax actually has a system like this already. They have magnets, so I could definitely see this being a real use case. Ah, okay, so now we see why they slide. They slide so the buttons can light up and there can be an animation. I'm still pretty unsure about this sliding in place system. Also, where did the mega bezel go? So it seems that it was plastic then. So you can take it off when in handheld mode, but if you want to use it on the TV, you have to add the plastic bit back and then dock it, right? Or maybe it's just an oversight and I'm looking too deeply. Yeah, it's probably just an oversight. I still don't get why the Y and X buttons are yellow though. Most likely it's just a thing that looks cool in a concept and I'm just a nitpicking bastard. There was obviously a great amount of love put into this. Originally with this video, I just wanted to look at this concept and critique it. But the more I went on, the more respect I had for the designer. If we're being completely honest here, a guy made a Switch 2 concept to be sleek and futuristic. So sure, there's some weird design choices, but ultimately I made this video about it, didn't I? And that's where this video originally concluded.
Objection!
Until I went onto Riccardo's Instagram. The first post on it is the infamous Switch 2 render. And clicking on it, what do we find? This wasn't just Riccardo's doing. This was a collaboration on a redesign of the original Nintendo Switch with a company called SLC Design. On Riccardo's Instagram, we see new renders of the console. We finally get to see the top of it, and oh my god. There is a bumper. But that's not all. We actually get to see the full top of the Joy-Con, so there's not only a bumper, there's a trigger too.
But I'm not done yet!
But wait, it's still not all. Do you remember the mega bezel? Well, it turns out that was only the base model, and Riccardo saw ahead and made a max model that's entirely just screen. I still don't know why anybody would get the base version, cause that bezel's ugly as hell, and the max just looks so crisp. But this isn't where this stops at all. At the time of making this script, Riccardo posted a reaction to an Italian YouTuber critiquing his design. Obviously, I don't speak Italian, and I definitely don't have enough money to get it translated. So what was the next best thing? That's right, YouTube live translations from Italian to English. So in this video, he goes over what he agrees and disagrees with in the redesign, and it seems that Riccardo was a good sport about the whole thing. He even liked the video. So was this entire video for nothing? Frobby beat me to the punch. I say no. In this video, we learn Riccardo has his own YouTube channel, going over every design choice for the original render. We have found it. We found This is where the case gets blown wide open. I decided to message Riccardo and his design company to see if he'd be down for an interview to get the full scoop. I waited a week and sadly there was no response. But that's okay, we still have his 20-minute expose on the entire thing to go over. And this is where we learn everything. Apparently this whole thing started off as a hoax to fool the internet into thinking that this concept was a real leak for the Switch 2. I feel like there may be some Mandela effect going on because some bigger Nintendo YouTubers actually chimed in on this entire thing a while back, such as RGT85 and Spawnwave, and I don't remember any of it, and I live for this kind of stuff. Mandela effect aside, Riccardo masterminded the entire operation to make it seem real. He made fake instructional pamphlets on how to use the Joy-Cons, and he even made a design board so it seemed like they were testing out newer designs. But as I said earlier, it was a collaboration between him and SLC Design, who we find out in this video is actually a designer with 10 years in the industry named Salvo Locascio. I'll just go by Salvo to save myself some embarrassment. Riccardo and Salvo go in depth about all of the flaws with the original Switch. In this, you learn he absolutely hated the original Joy-Cons. He wanted to make them symmetrical so when you play with another person you would share an equal controller, and it would be better for hand ergonomics. He said that the Joy-Cons were the most criticized part of the design, but he fully stands by it, and I can definitely see where he's coming from here. I tried to split off the controllers once to play Mario Kart with a friend, and wow, don't do that. It's not a fun experience. Does anybody else remember watching those Wii 2 and Xbox 720 mock-ups way back in the day? It seems that Riccardo did, and he seemed to have been inspired by those. But regardless, Riccardo and Salvo go into meticulous detail on how everything was planned out. Even the lit up buttons would be turned off when not connected to the console, so that when you're not playing in handheld, both people would have the exact same button layout. That's not where it ends on the Joy-Cons though either. They round it off the back so it'd be easier to grip. And there's also a button to release it from the console that doubles as another grip when you're playing with one Joy-Con on its side. And I'm frankly amazed at the attention to detail on what I thought at first was some hastily put together concept. They also addressed my gripe on the plus and minus buttons being completely removed. He said that the buttons essentially fill the same purpose as just being a start button. And while he's not wrong, he didn't add any other buttons to fill those roles. So that may be an oversight. Unless you count these buttons at the bottom of fulfilling those roles. But those are the screenshot and home buttons, so it's up to you to decide that. Going through this video though, they really care about symmetry. He goes on about how the Joy-Cons weren't symmetrical, so he fixed that. The top of the console isn't symmetrical, so he fixed that and moved the ugly cart slot into the middle so it would be more symmetrical. He even made the speakers and venting grills symmetrical on the bottom. Moving on to the dock, he said the current one is ugly and just covers up a screen that could have more info on it. And as I said earlier, I have to agree. Now, moving on to the UI, this is where I agree with him on the most. He says, and I quote, "The UI looks like an Office application. It is soulless and looks like it came from Windows 98. This is a hard agree. I think for some reason Nintendo was scared when they made the Switch 1. They didn't want it to come off as too childish or something like that, but in the end the core system lacked some of that Nintendo charm they really started to show off around the time as the GameCube. It really makes you think about the human condition. Where we started from to where we are now." So do you remember earlier in the video when I said, I decided to message Riccardo and sadly there was no response? Yeah, I completely lied. He replied the next day. To my shock, Riccardo actually agreed to a sit-down interview. Of course, social anxiety kicked in and I switched to DMs faster than a Nintendo fan complains about no game announcements for franchises they've never played. But Riccardo, the absolute legend, fully agreed to it. My first question was, do you know who Yanko Design is?
Yes, I know Yanko since I was a student. It's an amazing platform for sharing industrial design projects of any kind.
Second, how did Salvo assist you in creating the concept?
Well, with Salvo we had an extraordinary synergy. I know him very well and he pushed to implement the sliding mechanism that I didn't want to include because we didn't have enough time. We did the entire project in just 1 week. Therefore, I would have sacrificed this feature in order to focus more on other details. But luckily, I trust him and it went well. We did everything in time. Salvo provided also all the renderings while I was working working on the modeling and the design of the devices.
Third, do you think people misunderstand the Joy-Con design?
Yes, of course, and they looked to them ugly and bulky, but they changed the idea. They changed the idea when they realize the right proportion, especially when we compare the old model with the redesigned one. It actually is the same size as before, but just rounded.
Fourth, do you have any more changes that you couldn't include in the original concept? / what do you hope for in a Switch 2 that you couldn't include in your original concept?
I like very much the concept of the Switch, a flexible console that you can use in many different scenarios. The only two things that I hope Nintendo will improve in the next iteration are, of course, the interface and the OS, on which we put extra effort in order to make it not just a different and better experience, but make it coherent with the design of the hardware. As we speak, it's not very refined and it looks like a technical OS. On the hardware side, I like to see more magnets and less extra accessories like this to carry with me in my bag.
And finally, any words of encouragement to aspiring artists out there?
In my opinion, is a wonderful way to show creativity, to trigger discussion, and to bring on the table new ideas. To all the young artists and young designers, I will say experiment, play, and don't be afraid to change the point of view. Thank you. Bye.
Looking back at where this all started, I just wanted to make a video tearing down somebody else's work, but as I was ripping into this render, the only thing I could think was there was somebody who put hard work into this that I'm just shitting on. In the end, I didn't have the full picture at all. I just had a piece of a vast, complex puzzle. And isn't that what humans are? Vast canvases of emotions that have been formed from childhood, that people rarely get the true meaning of. We look and judge at first sight with no hint of remorse or empathy sometimes, because when we're behind a screen, we forget that there's another person behind another screen who just wants to share a piece of themselves with a fellow human. I know this may seem a little antithetical to the point of the video, but I disagree wholeheartedly. Riccardo and Salvo worked hard on a concept for the Switch 2, and I went in with pure vitriol, but after seeing the true meaning, I came out of this with a whole new respect for what they've created. So sure, all you clickbaiters, keep using this image. They deserve it. Damn it, I forgot to ask why the buttons are yellow. Wow, if you stuck to the end of this, I really appreciate you. This was a lot of hard work, and sometimes it can be disheartening, so if you liked what you saw, please consider liking and subscribing. At the time of making this, I have about 6 subscribers in total, so I would really appreciate it. If you're wondering on what I'm working on next, I have a follow-up to this ranking almost every Switch 2 concept out there, including all of the bigger Nintendo YouTubers' concept. Of course, I have a couple other ideas in the works, but I won't give that away just yet. Again, please hit the subscribe button, it would mean the world to me, and have a beautiful day.